contract features. I won't pull up the whole wording of the contract, but I'll give you a summary of the features and why they make the contract competitive. And then our local support. Before I do that, though, I have a little video. This one is going to play in just a moment, but what I'd like to highlight with IA is this slogan here: big enough to matter, small enough to care. I do truly believe in it. I have been with IA since 2009, and in that time I have seen IA grow significantly, both in the products that we offer, but also the electronic tools and the processes that we have, what's the word, transitioned, I guess, to digital fairly significantly. I would say starting somewhere around 2013, 2014, we launched our first online application, and since then have made significant improvements because of some of those changes, both product offerings and the online application process. We've been able to accelerate our growth, take in more cases, speed up underwriting, and be able to now offer some additional services like the large case team. So we are growing and we still are very competitive. That being said, one of our focuses, at least for sure on our sales team, that has not been lost in that transition, is we remain very close to our advisors. We like to build relationships with them so that we can help support them as much as possible. That is our goal. That has not changed. We do care about advisors, and we help support them as much as possible at all times. So I'm going to play a little video. It's going to take a second for me to move this over to the right screen, so bear with me.
With over 125 years of experience in helping Canadians and earning their trust, IA Financial Group is a key player in Canada's financial industry. And with more than 7,000 employees across Canada and a leadership team bringing together dedicated executives and innovative minds, we're uniquely positioned to serve our 25,000 representatives and 4 million clients while delivering on our brand promise: invested in you. IA Financial Group has proven its strength even during the most turbulent times. With over $180 billion of assets under management and a strong and consistent stock performance, IA is well positioned to focus on the next century ahead. In other words, we're big enough to matter, and we're small enough to care. By working closely with our advisors and clients from coast to coast, we understand their needs better than anyone else. We strongly believe in the value of advisors, so we do everything we can to help them be at the top of their game. Advisors can count on us to provide a complete range of insurance and investment products at competitive prices to meet their clients' needs. Moreover, we're constantly rolling out cutting-edge technological innovations, such as our electronic application EVO, letting advisors and clients save the most important commodity of all: time. At IA Financial Group, we're here to help, and that's why each of us will always be invested in you.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that video. There's a couple of things I like about that video. Number one, it talks about saving time. As a mom of 2 kids that's working full time, I definitely empathize with that. Anytime we can make our processes and how you work with us at IA simpler, more efficient, is going to be to your benefit and to your client's benefit. So that's kind of our goal, is to try and make it easy to work with us. The other thing I have to mention is some of those pictures of video, some of the pictures or videos or images of buildings in that video are actually our buildings that we own at IA. So you can see our Vancouver office in some of those shots. That it's always cool to me to see, because we don't say so much. I can see it on that video if I ever need to check. Okay, we're going to move forward now. I don't know if you are aware, but one of the things that we like to boast about a little bit is that we do, again, have part of our success due to the fact that we are #1 in application numbers in Canada. So in we were #1 in number of policies sold. That means that we have a lot of policies. Sometimes that means a lot of smaller ones. Part of the reason can be because we have the ability with our online EVO application to do instant issue cases, which means we've streamlined the process to make it easy for clients to get that application in without going through the full underwriting process, which means coverage is easily issued to the client faster and simpler. I really do think that a part of our success is part of that EVO process. So if you have not looked at it before or tried it, the online application process really is something that I do like on our IA platform. Now, in May 2020, a few weeks ago, we did make a change to our CI. I believe we talked about this briefly already, but I'll just highlight it here because I want to make 2 points as we go into the presentation when we're talking about our critical illness coverage and where it is competitive. So part of the changes that we made in May has given us a new rate band in our table. And so for certain face amounts, we actually are very competitive in terms of rates. So I just wanted to highlight that here. These categories are where I'm highlighting the fact that for this critical illness coverage, we will only require the declaration of insurability, not any medicals, paramedicals, blood, urine, none of that. Just the declaration, unless there are some questions or conditions that come out of the declaration that we need to follow up on. So one of the sweet spots that I do like to highlight, that in the middle, ages 41 to 50, for coverage less than 200,000, we don't need medicals. But because we've changed where that threshold is, it gave us a new rate band at that 200,000 face amount mark. So coverages for 200,000 or more now has a really good cost-effective rate per thousand. So there's kind of a sweet spot there. So that's always a good thing to know. And I'm going to highlight that again as we go ahead with the presentation. This is a screenshot of our medical requirements. I'm just going to put this in here because, again, it is newer. I want to make sure everybody is aware of what would be required for underwriting for cases for our critical illness now, because it has changed. Now, because I have, as I mentioned, been getting a lot of questions about how does our coverage now compare to this company and that company, and where would we be strong and where would we have a challenge? This is the pricing conversation that I would like to have. So where we compare to a few of the other companies that are out in the market right now. Where we do have a strong pricing advantage with a T10 critical illness policy. Remember that age bracket, 41 to 50, that new sweet spot. A face amount of 250,000. We are number 2 in the market in Canada for that. So our term CI policy, somewhere in between 200,000 and 250, sometimes up to 3. We're very strong, but that's a good sweet spot there. So we can have that advantage because we have that new rate band and because only the declaration of insurability is required. So that's one thing to think about. Where we do remain competitive and intentionally remain competitive is our more permanent options. So a T75 with or without flexible return of premium, which is one of our most sold options. And then T100 quick pay 20 with or without return of premium. So area more permanent options, T75, T100, we're very competitive. We're not at the top, but if we take a look at the contract features, I think you'll see there's a value in those based on price anyways. So there's another sweet spot there. And then very competitive, our T75 or T100 between at that ages 41 to 50 for 250 and above. So for our term around 250, again, we only need that declaration of insurability for this age bracket. So it is at least a helpful idea of where we would be strong if you're comparing pricing from our company to some others. So that's pricing, but that's not the whole picture. There's always different things in each of the contracts that I see in the market that give value to the client. Some of them are worth more than others. So we really need to look at what contract features are available and whether that's worth it for the client. So these are the top things that I see are our strengths on our CI contract, and we'll go through each of these points in a little bit more detail. Number 1, we have generally a critical illness option for almost anyone, whether they are a healthy child. We can cover very adequately for children with a quick pay choice with no underwriting. It's very easy to do because it's just a declaration. Whether it's somebody who has a medical condition and they're not eligible for the full 25 conditions coverage, we do have 2 other options to look at. So we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. The return of premium policy loan. This is a unique contract feature. You only have this option if the client has the return of premiums attached to their policy. And it is an automatic part of the contract. It's not something that's extra. It just is part of the contract, and it allows the client to take a premium holiday if they need to, if something ever happens. The increased benefit rider is a rider that's kind of like guaranteed insurability for critical illness, and we'll talk about that. Prevention Plus, our early detection type benefit. We do have some features in this contract that are a little bit stronger than some others. I know that there are other companies that have a similar feature, but they're not all the same. So we'll talk about that as well. And then survival periods, the number of days where an individual can be diagnosed with a condition but still needs to survive for the critical illness coverage to be paid. Our survival periods are very competitive. So if you're actually, again, comparing one contract to the other contract, you actually have to look at the survival periods for them, because some will be longer than others. So the client would have to live longer through their condition to be able to get paid. And obviously, the sooner the better when a client is needing to get the money because they're sick. And then lastly, EVO instant issue capabilities. I cannot emphasize enough how much I love the fact that we have the opportunity for healthier clients to just get through the underwriting. It's very fast. It makes it easy for you, easy for them, easy for us. It's just a win-win for everybody. So as much as you can use it, I definitely suggest giving it a shot. So this is just a look at the whole coverage platform that we have at IA on the individual side. The right-hand side of this page is all our investment options. The left-hand side is our life at the top, which Rishu and Ross were already discussing today. I am going to discuss on the very bottom the living benefits, just our critical illness options. And you can see here on this slide, there are a few to choose from. One of the things that we're going to start with right now is to take a look at the 3 different coverage options we have and why it is a strength for your clients. Excuse me. Before I do that, I do just want to highlight one other thing. The statistics that highlight how large of a critical illness market is out there. This is an eye-opener for me when I first saw it. 1 in 2 Canadians could develop cancer during their lifetime. That's 50% of people in the country could end up with cancer. However, 92% of Canadians do not have individual critical illness insurance. They might have savings, they might have a group policy, they might have, I don't know, they might have another plan in place. But in terms of actual critical illness coverage, specifically individual, 92% of people do not have it. That means there are a lot of people in the country that we can talk to that could probably use something. So let's talk about it, at least put it as a question in your needs analysis with your client when you're just getting to know what they're looking for. Let's start that conversation, because it really is something that people do use. Similarly, for disability, 1 in 7 Canadians are disabled at any given time. However, 90% of Canadians do not have an individual disability coverage. They might have group coverage, they might have employer coverage, but it's not individual based, and individual is going to be always more customized to that client's need. So if you can, again, have that conversation with the client, do they have something in place if they're in a car accident and they need to be able to take care of some of their income or their care needs? Do they have that in place? Let's discuss it. Okay. Now, this is one of my favorite slides. I think I do it every time I have a talk about critical illness, because I think it really does highlight some perspective when we're talking about figuring out the best option for the client. This is taking a look at the claims statistics for critical illness. So how many claims for which conditions are claimed for when it happens. So 63% of claims for critical illness are for cancer, which is the large portion of it. That's the majority of critical illness claims that we see is for cancer. If we add together the 3 heart conditions, stroke, coronary artery bypass surgery, and heart attack, it's actually 84% of the claims that we see. So if you have a client who maybe has family history or maybe has a medical condition, and they're not eligible for the fully underwritten coverage option, but they still want something, if you can cover those top 4 conditions, cancer, heart attack, stroke, coronary artery bypass surgery, if you can do those 4, you're covering the majority of the risk for the client. And that's where we need to, that's what we need to do. That's the biggest thing, is to be able to cover the majority of the risk. If we can do that, you're doing a great service for the client. So that is part of the reason why we have 3 different options for critical illness coverage, because not everyone is eligible. They might not have the health that they would prefer to have, but they still do need some coverage. So we'll go through that in a minute. This is a discussion I just wanted to highlight on how or when a critical illness policy will put money into a client's pocket. Maybe not pocket these days, maybe a bank account. I don't know how many of us carry cash around. It's usually a card or something on your phone, but money into the client's bank account. These are the 3 ways that critical illness will do that. Number 1, if they are diagnosed with a critical illness, that part is fairly obvious for the most part. Their face amount pays to the client and the coverage ends. Second option, if the individual is diagnosed with early stages of cancer, for example, our Prevention Plus coverage would allow them to have a small lump sum paid to them, and their coverage remains intact. So the original face amount that they have does not become impacted by the small lump sum that is paid. And that is one of the areas where we have some strengths as well. And we'll talk about that in some more detail. And then lastly, return of premiums. If there are no claims on the CI side and they've chosen to have the return of premium at certain milestones of the contract or at death, their money is returned to them. The money that they paid for the coverage is put back into their bank account. So those are the 3 ways that they can get coverage that puts money into their account. And I'm just seeing here, let me check. I see that there's a question, so let's see. Oh, never mind. Okay, so we're going to jump ahead into the critical illness options, and I'm just going to try and summarize these 3. I'm not going to go into too much depth on the options available. We do have one slide that sort of gives you an idea. I really do think once you go into the software and you do an illustration, you'll see exactly what you need to see. But these are the main points of each of the contracts. So first thing we have to take a look at is that we have 3 coverage options to choose from: Transition 25, Transition 4, and Cancer Guard. As you go from left to right, excuse me, Transition 25 is our most comprehensive option, fully underwritten with 18 questions, and you have the most flexibility on the contract. I have on this list, return of premiums are available, policy loan is available, and Prevention Plus is included. Those 3 points we're going to look at in detail because they are part of the contract features that make these coverage options competitive. Transition 4, it is again an underwritten coverage option, but instead of 25 conditions, it's just covering 4, and it's easier to qualify for. So people who are, again, they have family history or they have medical conditions, or they just want to simplify things a little bit, this is a really good option. You're again going to cover those 4 conditions: cancer, heart attack, stroke, coronary artery bypass surgery. You're going to cover that 84% of the risk that we see with this option. It's just easier to do. There is the option to have a reducing face amount rather than a level face amount. The reason why we have that in place is because we do see this coverage option used to compare or compete with mortgage coverage that a banking institution might provide, because we do have a product that you can kind of put together as a package for covering mortgages. And when, at least in my experience, when you go take a look at a mortgage with a banking institution, they're looking at covering life, CI, and DI. We can do that as well, but on an individual basis. But to keep it competitive, we have to only cover 4 conditions and have a reducing face amount to be similar to what the bank offers, is they will only look at covering the outstanding balance of the mortgage at that time, which is ideally declining over time. So that's just there. It's an option to have. This contract still does have the return of premiums, which we'll talk about, the policy loan option, which we'll talk about, and the Prevention Plus option. And those three, again, are where we can be very competitive. The last choice, Cancer Guard. I wish I had a miracle that I could say it guards against cancer, but it is a coverage that is designed to pay if the client is diagnosed with cancer. So it was initially designed to be something that is available for people who are not eligible for underwritten coverage, but they still would like to cover that one condition, cancer, which is again 63% of the claims that we see. So we're still going to be able to cover for the large potential risk for the client. It's very easy to apply for just the cancer coverage. To get some coverage up to $50,000 of face amount, you just have to answer the question, do you have AIDS or HIV? And have you ever had signs or symptoms of cancer? If the client can say no to that, they can get some coverage here. Additionally, if the client is a visitor to the country and they're not eligible for the amount that they would want for fully underwritten CI, this is another option here as well. We don't ask anything about residency. The only thing we require is that they have been in the country for 12 months or more. And they have a Canadian bank account and a Canadian address. So it really is a kind of an option available for all the cases where they're not eligible for the underwritten choice. It is a simplified version. You can add other conditions to it based on the medical questions that the client goes through, and we'll go through that in a little bit more detail. At the end of the day, I just hope that everybody knows it is there as an option if the client's not eligible for the Transition 25 or Transition 4. It is a simplified version, and you do have to go to a different platform to do the application, but I can show that as well. I can show you where you go to go. Okay, now we're going to take a look at, this is just a screenshot of the options that we have available for Transition 25 and 4. Just that you can see there's a T10, T20, 25, T75, T100, and some quick pay choices. It's just a screenshot that gives you that information. What I wanted to get to here is our list of conditions that are covered. As you can see, there are 25 of them here. Loss of independent existence is included. It's not a rider, so that's one area where we can be different. And the 4 conditions that are highlighted in white are the 4 conditions that are included in the Transition 4 coverage. So that's one thing to note there is that they're a little bit different. So now that you have an idea of the main differences between a couple of the options that we have, I really do hope that you see that we do generally have an option available for most people, a coverage option based on their budget or on their medical situation. And this just gives you an idea of the cost difference as we go from a decreasing term 10 for the 4 illness coverage all the way to a T100 with all the riders attached with return premium, and compare that to the pricing for the full 25 illnesses. So you can see that the 4 illnesses is going to be a little bit less expensive. It covers fewer conditions, and it's fewer underwriting questions to get. The full 25 is going to be a little bit more expensive, but it covers more conditions, and the underwriting is a little bit more detailed. There are 10 more questions to get through. So I hope that gives you an idea. We do generally have an option for most people. Okay. I do want to highlight a couple of things before we jump ahead a little bit. For our critical illness coverage, when it comes to people who are newer to Canada, I get this question a lot as well. It will depend what their status is and how long they've been in the country, whether we can provide the option to have critical illness coverage. So for example, a student who is here, they would be eligible for 100,000 face amount of CI if they've been in the country for 3 years or more. Now that's for the full 25 coverage conditions and the 4. If, however, they've been here for 12 months or more, we could offer them Cancer Guard. Because again, we only ask, have you been in the country for 12 months or more? We don't ask what their residency status, we don't ask if they have a visa, we don't ask any of that. It's just, have you been here in the country for this number of months? And can you get through those medical questions? So I really do think this is a very good option for people who are in that situation and they're still getting established in the country. So let's go through a couple of things on the Cancer Guard side. I just wanted to highlight briefly some of the main points. We don't have a medical exam. It's just the questions to get that Cancer Guard policy. We can cover kids all the way up to age 65. There is no, we do not look at the Medical Insurance Bureau. So if they have applied for a life policy elsewhere, for example, their information could be on the MIB system. We don't look at it for this coverage. We may for other coverages for fully underwritten options. So it really does allow accessibility here. The last thing I want to draw your attention to is this pre-existing condition 2424 at the bottom of this slide. This is referring to a pre-existing condition clause. So if the client has 24 months before the date of issue or 2 years, if they have had any signs or symptoms of cancer, they would not be able to make a claim on it 24 months or 2 years after the date of issue. So there's a 2-year time frame before and after date of issue where there's a limitation on if they could claim for something they knew they already had. It's really to help filter out people thinking they have cancer or maybe could have signs of cancer, then getting coverage and then claiming on it kind of intentionally. It's really to sort of filter out that. So it is important clients do know that that is there. Outside of that, these are generally the sort of steps or information I would highlight on how you can get this critical illness coverage. I mentioned earlier, to have some coverage, they just have to say they do not have any signs or symptoms of cancer and AIDS. If they can get through those questions, they can have up to 50,000 of cancer coverage. If they want to have more face amount, there's 2 more questions to answer over here. Have they had any CI declined or postponed in the past 2 years? If it was 5 years ago, it doesn't matter. It's the 2 years. And then family history of cancer before age 60 for 2 or more immediate family members. And that means brother, sister, father, mother. Only those 4. It doesn't matter if it's cousin, grandparents, it's just the direct blood relative. Those are the people that we're looking at. If the client wants more coverage than that, we are then asking about family history of some more specific cancers, again, before age 60 for 1 or more family members. Now, for somebody who is a student, for example, and they're young, the chances are they're very likely going to be able to get through those questions quite easily. If you want to make this policy into more than just cancer coverage, we can add additional illnesses. So would add stroke, coronary artery bypass surgery, coma, paralysis, and heart attack. We can add those 5 to the cancer to make 6. So you could turn it into a 6-condition critical illness policy by answering the remaining 3 questions to get up to that 150,000. So we're asking about diabetes, heart conditions, kidney disease, family history of certain heart conditions for 2 or more family members before age 60, and then Huntington's, some more specific details about family history. Again, most of the time, I would say 80% of the time, clients can usually get through this, especially if they're young individuals and they don't have and they could have their own medical condition actually, but they could still get coverage for those 6 conditions based on these questions. Okay, so now we've gone through the fact that we do have a lot of options for different family history or medical conditions and options for different budgets. And the ease of accessibility, with most cases, we're trying to make it easy to get the coverage with just needing that declaration of insurability rather than having to go through a fully underwritten process that takes a little bit more time. And we do have very comprehensive options for new Canadians. So all of those things I think are very strong, good reasons to help your client get coverage that they need. Now we're going to look at a couple of the contract features. So the transition riders that can be added to the critical illness policy, either fully underwritten or simplified issue, and the policy loan feature that is available on the fully underwritten choice. So to get access to the policy loan feature, you do need to have these two riders on the screen currently: the return of premiums upon death and flexible return of premiums. Once you have those two, they combine together, and the contract then will have that access to the policy loan, which we're going to talk about. When you go do an illustration, you'll see what the rates are for each of the options and which option is available for the the coverage you're looking at for your client. One thing I want to just highlight is, for example, FRP 15 just means flexible return of premium in 15 years. So at year 15, 100% of the premiums that were paid would be available for the client to take back and surrender the policy. There will be a value in that policy to access for the returning premium loan. So between year 5 and 15, there's going to be some form of a value, and you'll be able to see that in the client's access on their client access. The client can see it, you as the advisor can see it, it will be in the illustration and the contract. So the actual values will be there that you can see. Now, I mentioned this a little bit earlier. We do have a rider that's also a little bit more unique. It's called the Increased Benefit Rider. This is what I mentioned is very much like guaranteed insurability for critical illness. So it just means that you can go through, or the client can go through today, and for a very small rider fee, they could have the opportunity to increase their coverage at the end of the 5th policy year, or the beginning of the 6th, and the beginning of the 11th policy year. They could increase their coverage by up to 50%, 50, of the basic base amount. The places where I see this used most often are when we're looking at coverage for kids. It could be a T100 quick pay policy, and it's maybe 100,000, but the parents down the road think that they might want to increase that coverage amount. You can add this increased benefit rider, underwrite the individual child today, and have the option for the future. The rider, $2 a month, like that, really is based on age, but it's a very cost-effective way to get more coverage down the road, and they don't have to use it if they want to. So if the anniversary comes up and they decide they don't want to increase the coverage, they don't have to. You're just underwriting the option today to be able to do it. So that is a little bit more unique to us. The other place I see this used often as well is for small business owners. Maybe there's a business owner that is just getting started out. They do believe that they want to have critical illness for their company or for the key person, but cash flow isn't there yet to be able to pay for the policy size they actually want. If the individual is healthy, you can underwrite them today to have more coverage in the future. It could be 5 years from now when cash flow would be better, and they can increase the coverage at that time. So it really does add some flexibility. And I do see that as being one feature that we have that is very competitive. Again, that rider, probably people won't know about it unless you're playing around with the software or you're reading the whole contract. It's a little bit different. I don't think a lot of people know about it. So that's why I'm mentioning it. It is something that's different for us. This is just a table that gives you an idea of what I was talking about before about the flexible return of premium option and how there is a amount or a percentage of premiums that starts in year 5. As you can see on the FRP 15, starts in year 5, and at 15 years, it's going to be 100% available. Again, as I mentioned, if you combine both return of premium at death and flexible return of premium, you have access to the policy loan feature. And I'm going to give, I guess, a really good example where I've seen this actually become very effective for a client. We had a corporate client. The business owner was an owner of multiple rental properties. I think they were commercial rental properties. He owned a few of them. He had critical illness for himself through his company. And it had been a few years since it was, I think it was 7 years since it was issued, something like that. And they were having cash flow issues. They were in the process of selling one of the properties, but it hadn't happened yet. It was still going to take another week or two. There was just in the finalization of the whole process, and the policy anniversary came up and they didn't have the cash flow to pay for the policy. So what happened, the policy loan feature kicked in automatically. We used the return of premium amount to pay for premiums for the client. It started an automatic loan. Yes, there was an interest rate that is attached to it, but as soon as the sale of that property happened, they were able to pay back the premium owed plus the tiny bit of interest that had grown over the 2 weeks, and the policy remained in force. Everything was left the way it should have been. It just added that extra amount of flexibility for the client, which they sincerely appreciated in the end. And again, I can't stress enough how much value I think is in being able to give your client that flexibility when stuff happens that they don't expect is going to happen. It really does help them along the way. They've put this plan in force for a reason. Why not give the option to add flexibility for when things come unexpectedly? I do love this feature. If you're going to talk about doing the return of premium riders anyways, if you're comparing that with the discussion with clients, take a look at the ability to have this flexibility. It can be very powerful. Okay, so we talked about some of the places where we're a little bit more competitive on pricing. We talked about the fact that we have multiple coverage options. We talked about the fact that we have flexibility if you add the riders to our contracts to have that automatic policy loan. It really does add flexibility for the future if things do happen and you just don't know what to expect. Okay, I'm going to jump ahead. I'm going to skip a couple slides because I want to get to the next section. There we go. Okay, so the next section where we have something that's a little bit more unique is included in our Prevention Plus clause in the contract. Now, Prevention Plus is for early stages of certain conditions. As you can see on this list, there are 7 conditions that are covered. Most of them are related to cancer, so early stages of cancer, and then coronary angioplasty. The reason why I would suggest that there are 7 early stage cancer conditions on here is because the definition of cancer on our critical illness is life-threatening cancer. So if your client has early stage skin cancer, for example, they wouldn't be able to claim on the full face amount, but they would be able to claim on this Prevention Plus feature. And this is, again, probably going to be the most used. A lot of times I would say people do get diagnosed these days with cancer and they survive. They don't die as often as maybe they used to. So this part of the contract is being used more and more. So it is something that I definitely hope is mentioned. I have seen claims come through for this specific section of the contract as well. So what happens if my client is diagnosed with stage A prostate cancer, for example? We would send in something to claims, and the client could get a payment of 15% of the face amount up to a maximum of $50,000 per payment. So the client would get a small lump sum, enough to allow them to take some time off of work for a few weeks, for a month, to be able to get back on their feet, deal with the emotions and the challenges of having this type of a diagnosis, but then get back on and on with their life. The place where we are different is even if the client is making a claim on Prevention Plus, that small lump sum will not impact the face amount that they have in force. It does not change the coverage they have existing. And I would suggest that since they've had a claim for early stages of cancer, they're probably more at risk for ones in the future where they'll need this coverage in force. So it really is a strong contract on what I would like to think is an area of the coverage that is probably used a lot, and the clients can really benefit from in this area. You could have a contract that pays in this part of it up to 4 times, and again, none of those times will affect the coverage in force. So I really do like this feature, the ability to keep the coverage that they wanted in the first place, even though they've had an early stage of cancer, for example, and they've had to have a small payout. So it does not reduce the face amount. That is key. The contract does also include Mediguide, which is very similar to what we had in the past. It's very similar to Best Doctors. It allows for access to a second opinion for specialists to take a look at the client's situation and provide that specialist opinion, and also potentially provide other treatment options. So it is included as part of the contract. There's a phone number to call, and the process is completely through Mediguide. All clients who have our transition critical illness will have access to Mediguide. Okay, we just have a couple more points here. I'm just looking at the time. We have time for a few more things. The next option is to take a look at survival periods. And really, this is just one slide that I'm going to show you. This is in our contract. It's in our field underwriting guide as well. It's in our product summary. This is just taking a look at the survival period for certain conditions. And as you can see here, all of the conditions that we have that have a survival periods are related to heart conditions. So heart attack, heart valve replacement, stroke, and aortic surgery, and coronary artery bypass surgery. They are all 30 days. If you compare this to some other contracts, you'll see that some will have slight differences here for certain conditions. Ours are very straightforward. They're all the same 30 days. So we have a strength there. Also for the Prevention Plus, if you had to claim on that one heart condition that is included in Prevention Plus, it's 30 days as well. Okay, so those are all the pieces in the specific contract that I really do like for our critical illness coverage and where we stand in the market. Our goal is to be very strong, and I think we're going to have critical illness coverage change and be adapted in the near future, but I don't have any details yet. But I know we were trying to stay very competitive. It is one of our strongest sellers. So those are some of the reasons why I do love our contract a lot. The last point here is really regarding our instant issue coverage option. Sorry, instant issue option through EVO. As you can see here, the acceptance rate, 60% at point of sale. So the reason why I love this so much is because an advisor like yourself can be having a discussion with a client. You go through the illustration with them and discuss the options with them. Then you can go through the application with them, or you can start the application and save it and come back to them later when they're ready to go. Everything will be saved in that platform. But as soon as they make the decision that they want to go forward, you can submit the application. Your client on their phone will get a text message saying, congratulations, your application has been submitted. Here's the application number. Or congratulations, your coverage is now approved. So you could do that whole process if you wanted to in about 20 minutes, and the coverage is enforced for the client. For critical illness, I think that is fantastic. We are trying to make more and more that process with the approved part happen immediately, more accessible to clients, because it really is in their best interest. So I do hope that it really does help your clients as we go forward. So just in summary, these are the main reasons why I do love our critical illness coverage option. Number one, we have something usually for everyone. We have 3 different options to choose from. And if you want to sit down and go through and take a look at any of those to see if they're a good fit for your client, that's what I'm here for. That's what Efforts in here is here for. We're here to help you. We've talked about the return of premium and how to combine them together to have access to that policy loan. It's a very strong feature in the contract to be able to have that premium holiday if clients ever need it is great. The increased benefit rider is like our guaranteed insurability for critical illness. So for healthy clients, children, and people who are maybe small business owners or even young adults, I would say it could work really well as well. If you know that they're going to want more coverage down the road, this is a great way to do it. Underwrite their health today while they're healthy and you know they're good. And for a small rider fee of maybe about $2 a month, they can have that option to increase down the road. Prevention Plus is that early detection option for early stages of cancer and coronary artery bypass surgery. Again, the key here is that if the client ever has to claim on Prevention Plus with us, it doesn't reduce their coverage in any form. It is actually an increase in a way, they benefit more than just the face amount here. And we do see it used quite often because more and more people are not being diagnosed with fully life-threatening cancer. They're more and more being diagnosed with early stages, which is where this falls into. Survival periods. When you compare contract to contract, our survivor periods are only attached to those heart conditions, and they are only 30 days, so they're very competitive when you look at us versus some other companies. And then our ability to cover clients with that instant issue option. The clean application, as I say, really is the situation where you're going to get a client that gets instantly issued CI, rather than having to go through underwriting and have that delay. So I really do like all of these features. One last thing, and then I will open it up for questions. If you don't know or are not aware of this, the client, your client, once they have coverage issued, they will have access to their policy on our website through My Client Space. So it's a secure login process that we use their policy number and email address, and they'll be able to log into it. There's an option to register. This exact letter is sent to the client as well. It's not a letter, but it's a little brochure. It's sent to the client with instructions on how to do that and creating an account. So for myself, I have my own mortgage coverage and my life insurance and my CI with IA. I have access to my own account where I can see my policies. I can make a change to my address if I want to through this platform because that's My Client Space. So if you aren't familiar with it, please take a look. It is a really good place to help your client have their own sort of access to their policy. So I like that there as well. This is a list of some of the tools that are all associated with our transition coverage. On the far right-hand side, documents in Mandarin. I need to add to this because I think there might have been one new one added. I'll have to double check. There might be one new document that is now in Mandarin, but we do have some options available as well. And if there's ever a document that you see on our advisor center that you think should be in Mandarin or would be helpful, let me know. Send me an email and I can make a request to have it translated and published that way. Our team is very open to making those kinds of changes. We just need that feedback from you. So if you see benefit in having something else translated and available to help you and your client, just let us know. All right. So again, I think Rishu already covered the CPB program. I'm not going to go through it in depth again. She did talk about it and highlight a couple of points. The only thing I'm going to add here is just let's take a look at a CI case. If you wanted to try and achieve CPB through our critical illness coverage, this is one example. I just wanted to show you 100,000 face amount of T75, our fully underwritten coverage option for a female 40-year-old non-smoker. The annual premium is at $1,650. Excuse me. We do a little math. 50% of that amount is 825, and if you recall, to reach CPB, we need 10,000 FYC. Again, we do a little bit of math, and we find that comes up to 12. So it would actually be 12 policies per year to qualify for CPB. Or you could also say one CI case per month. And I think if we look at it that way, it can be very achievable to just get to that point. Then you have access to obviously an increased bonus, but you also have access to our advertising allowance and our education allowance, which I know can be very helpful, especially if you're helping with doing seminars with clients and you need a little of extra budget there, or you're looking at doing your own education towards a CFP, for example. You can use that fund towards that. So there really is a way that we like to help support you. Lastly, I think that's all that I had for today. We do have 5 or 10 minutes for some questions. If we didn't cover everything you want to know on critical illness today, please feel free to email me. I spend lots of time going through emails every day, but it really is the best way to reach me is through email. So on the bottom left, Venora McClay, there's my email address there. If you cannot reach me and you need to get an answer to a question fairly quickly, Alfredson Tolentino on the bottom right, he's my marketing associate, sorry. He can be reached if I'm in a presentation like right now. You can get with him. Either one of us can help with your questions that you might have, whether it's where do I go to do an illustration, or can you help me with some of the wording on the contract, or I have a case, can you help me walk through it? Any of those questions we can help you with. That's what we're here for. That's what we love to do. And thank you again. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining us. I know 2 hours is a lot of content. I hope it's helpful. And again, I'm going to open it up now if there are any questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And then let's see, I think there was a question in the chat that I'll just take a look at here. Let's see, chat. We need the Mandarin version about CI. If you have, please post it to me. Okay, so the question I think is regarding a Mandarin version of some critical illness documents. You know what I'm going to do? Why don't I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. I'm going to show you all where to get them. Let me go ahead and share my screen again. Here we go. So this is our Advisor Center. So if you go to our website and then go to the Advisor Center, this is our Advisor Center platform. If you click on Document Center here on this tab in the top, click on that. This will take you to where you can find copies of our contracts, copies of our brochures, copies of our cheat sheets, summary tables, all of that will be in here. If you scroll down to the bottom here, I'm going to unselect English and I'm going to select Mandarin. And all of these documents are in Mandarin. There's 26 of them. At least 3 of them are going to be in relation to critical illness. So this first one, Chinese transition client brochure, is going to be the exact same as our English one, just translated. And there you go. This one I do like because it lists the conditions that are available. This is about Prevention Plus. So it's not too detailed, but it really does provide most of the information that we have. What was the other one? The other one that I like for our critical illness is this one. The definitions and medical conditions. I like that this one is translated. I have had quite often advisors not really knowing the English word and what that translates to. So I think that having this in Mandarin does help a lot. I have had a lot of good feedback on there. So this is available also on our Document Center. If you need me to send it to you an email, just send me a quick email and I'll have no problem. I'll gather them together and send them to you. Again, there's my email address here. And I'm more than happy to email them to you. Okay, was there another question? Let's see. What is the current CI policy loan rate? Very good question. So last time I checked, I need to change it to English. Last time I checked, it was 4.2. It's attached to the prime rate plus a little bit. But I know that the rate changed recently. Where is it? I'm going to have to pull it up. Usually the rate schedule is the first thing that comes up here. There is a